My mother-in-law wanted to kill me, but my husband ate them. My mother-in-law sent me refrigerated gourmet chocolates for my birthday. The next day, she called and asked, how were the chocolates? I smiled and said, my husband ate them all. There was a pause. Her voice trembled. What? Are you serious? And then my husband called me. The Boston summer was humid, and Althea Collins had her apartment air conditioner running at full blast while she worked. Her Macintosh screen displayed the website design for a new client. Althea was building a reputation as a freelance web designer. Honey, there's a message from my mother, Gerald called from the sofa in the living room. Althea involuntarily shrugged her shoulders. Communications from her mother-in-law, Patricia, often caused problems. What does she say? Althea asked without interrupting her work. Gerald looked at his cell phone and answered, she's asking if we'd like to have dinner at her place next Sunday. She wants to celebrate your birthday. Althea took a deep breath. Patricia Collins behaved politely on the surface, but there always seemed to be something hidden behind her words. After 3 years of marriage, Althea had never felt genuine warmth from her mother-in-law. I'll go if you want to, Althea said. Looking at her husband's face, she could see how truly pleased he was. Gerald was a financial analyst with sharp judgment at work, but when it came to family matters, he was strangely blind, especially regarding his mother. Wonderful. Mother has started to accept you recently, Gerald said with a smile. She even said the other day, Althea has become a good wife. Althea returned his smile, but inside she felt doubtful. It was unusual for Patricia to say anything nice about her. In fact, since their wedding day, Patricia seemed to treat Althea as the woman who stole my son. Is Vanessa coming too? Althea asked about her sister-in-law. Oh, of course. She's been living at Mom's house lately, Gerald answered casually. After graduating from college, Vanessa had held several jobs that didn't last long and eventually returned to her mother's home. Althea couldn't ignore the coldness in Vanessa's gaze toward her. Those eyes were clearly filled with jealousy. All right, Althea said with a sigh. Should we bring anything? No, Mom says she'll prepare everything. Oh, and she mentioned she's preparing a special present for you. Gerald's voice sounded pleased. Althea forced a smile. A special present from Patricia meant a sweater 3 sizes too small last Christmas. The Easter before that, it was a cake full of nuts that Althea was allergic to. They were all things Patricia could easily excuse with "I didn't know." In the evening, as Althea was preparing dinner in the kitchen, Gerald came up behind and embraced her. What are you thinking about? He asked gently. Your mother, she answered honestly, and Gerald's expression clouded. Are we starting this again, Althea? Mom just wants to get along with you. Althea stopped herself from arguing back. This conversation had been repeated many times. Gerald never tried to see behind his mother's words and actions. For him, Patricia was the perfect mother, and if there were any problems, they must be on Althea's side. I'm sorry, Althea said. I'm just tired. Gerald kissed her to show forgiveness, but a small dissatisfaction remained in his eyes. During these 3 years, the tension in Althea and Gerald's relationship had gradually increased. At the beginning of their marriage, Gerald had acted protectively toward Althea, keeping distance from the excessive interference of his mother and sister. However, as time passed, he was gradually pulled back into the vortex of his original family. When the weekend came, Althea met with her friend Jessica at a cafe while Gerald was out golfing with friends. You're going to your mother-in-law's house again? Jessica asked with surprise. Last time, didn't she say something like, there's too much salt in your cooking? I'm worried about Gerald's health. Yes, Althea smiled bitterly. But I understand that Gerald values his relationship with his mother. Family means everything to him. Aren't you his family? Jessica frowned. Gerald doesn't say anything when Patricia and Vanessa always look down on you. Althea stirred her coffee thoughtfully. He doesn't notice. In his eyes, his mother is perfect. Jessica took her friend's hand. Be careful. I don't think Patricia truly accepts you. Althea nodded. She felt the same way. During each visit, she sensed Patricia's subtle sarcasm and Vanessa's cold stares. Still, she loved Gerald and had to endure it for his sake. The day before her birthday, Gerald kissed Althea and promised, tomorrow will be a wonderful day. As Althea lay in bed, she hoped it would be true. Yet somewhere in her heart, she sensed that tomorrow's visit would create new tension. When she closed her eyes, Patricia's false smile and the true feelings hidden behind it appeared. The accumulation of small insults and intentional disregard over 3 years had created an indelible anxiety within Althea. Althea's birthday morning began with a clear blue sky. While preparing breakfast, the intercom rang. Delivery for you. Refrigerated package. Althea went to the door and received a package from the delivery person. Looking at the sender's name, she saw Patricia Collins. She was a bit surprised by the unexpected gift. Gerald, something arrived from your mother. Gerald, coming out of the bathroom while drying his hair, looked at the package with interest. It must be a birthday present. Let's open it. Althea carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was an elegant black box with Chateau Chocolatier written in gold letters. It was the name of Boston's most luxurious chocolate shop. Wow, Mom's being generous. These chocolates cost over $100 a box, Gerald said, impressed. Inside the box, various shapes of chocolates were beautifully arranged, with a small card attached. Althea picked it up and read, specially selected just for you. The handwriting was Patricia's meticulous script. See, Gerald said happily. Mom has finally accepted you, sending such expensive chocolates. Althea smiled but felt uneasy deep inside. She couldn't believe Patricia would suddenly change her attitude. However, seeing Gerald's happy face, she couldn't voice her doubts. That's very thoughtful. I'll enjoy them later. All day, Althea immersed herself in her web design work. In the evening, Gerald came home early and stood in the kitchen to prepare a special birthday dinner. Althea sat on the sofa in the living room, relieving the day's fatigue. Dinner is ready, Gerald called out. The meal proceeded in a pleasant atmosphere. Gerald opened wine and offered a toast to celebrate Althea's birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, my love. I'll be with you forever, Gerald said, raising his glass. After dinner, while Gerald was cleaning up in the kitchen, he came across the chocolate box resting neatly on the counter. How about some dessert, he called out. He opened the box and picked one up. This one looks amazing. Althea was tired. I'm a bit full now. I think I'll save them for tomorrow. Just one won't hurt, right? Before she could answer, Gerald had already put the chocolate in his mouth. Wow. These are incredible. Althea smiled gently. I'll look forward to trying them tomorrow. Just one more, Gerald mumbled, already reaching for another. Althea didn't mind. He seemed happy, and it was her birthday. She excused herself to take a shower, the hot water soothing away the weight of the day. When she came out, Gerald was still in the living room, watching a documentary with the chocolate box beside him. Exhausted, Althea went to bed early and quickly fell asleep. Unbeknownst to her, Gerald sat in the dim living room, slowly and absent-mindedly eating chocolate after chocolate. He lost track of time and how many he'd eaten. The next morning, Althea woke up to find Gerald already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee and a distant look in his eyes. Good morning, birthday girl, he greeted her. That ended yesterday, Althea replied playfully. I think I'll finally try one of those chocolates now. She walked into the living room and stopped in her tracks. The chocolate box was completely empty. Gerald, did you eat them all? He gave her an apologetic shrug. I didn't mean to. I just couldn't stop. They were really good. Althea tried not to let her disappointment show. Well, I guess you'll just have to buy me some more next time. Just then, the phone rang. Patricia's name flashed across the screen. Oh, it's your mother, she said, and answered. Althea, good morning, Patricia's voice came through, unusually cheerful. Happy belated birthday. I hope the chocolates arrived. They did, thank you, Althea said. They looked beautiful. Oh good. Patricia said, her voice almost beaming. How did they taste? I picked out something very special this time. Althea chuckled. Well, Gerald ate them all last night. I didn't even get one. There was a long pause on the other end. When Patricia finally spoke again, her tone was uneven. Are you serious? That unexpected reaction made Althea uneasy. Yes, he ate them all before I had the chance. He said they were delicious. I see, Patricia replied softly, almost to herself. The conversation ended awkwardly. Althea hung up with a furrowed brow, unable to shake the discomfort creeping up in her chest. Seconds later, Gerald's phone rang. He answered it, listened quietly, then stood up suddenly. His face had gone pale. Amy, I got a call from the clinic. I think I need to go in. Before he could finish the sentence, he clutched his stomach and stumbled toward the bathroom. Althea followed in alarm as he began vomiting violently. He looked up at her with bloodless lips. Call an ambulance. Althea immediately dialed 911, her hands trembling. By the time paramedics arrived, Gerald's condition had worsened. His skin was clammy, and his body shook uncontrollably. As he lay on the bathroom floor, one paramedic checked his vitals. He's severely dehydrated. We need to administer fluids immediately. How long has he been showing symptoms? The other asked. He was fine until this morning, but he started looking pale after waking up, Althea replied, voice shaking. Then he just collapsed. Last night, he didn't. She stopped. Her thoughts jumped back to the chocolate box. Thomas had eaten every piece. The ambulance siren grew louder as they sped through the streets. Inside, Althea sat beside Gerald, holding his hand tightly. It's okay. We're almost there. Just hang on, she whispered. His forehead was burning. His breathing became erratic. He couldn't stay awake. When they arrived at the hospital, the medical team rushed Gerald into the treatment room. Althea was left in the waiting area, hands trembling as she filled out forms. She glanced down at her phone. 5 missed calls from Patricia. It rang again. She answered. Althea, Patricia's voice was frantic. Why isn't Gerald picking up? Where is he? He's in the hospital. He collapsed after breakfast. There was a silence, then Patricia said, which hospital? I'm coming now. Althea told her and hung up, but the sense of unease intensified. Patricia's reaction, it hadn't been a normal mother's worry. It felt like fear. 30 minutes later, Patricia arrived, accompanied by Vanessa. Both looked shaken. Patricia ran straight to the reception desk. Where is my son? Althea stood and walked over. He's still being treated. I haven't heard anything yet. Patricia turned to her. Her face, so often a mask of cold civility, looked almost hollow. What happened? She asked. How did he get sick so suddenly? I don't know. He looked pale this morning. And then he just started vomiting. He had those chocolates you sent last night, Althea added cautiously. The words seemed to strike a nerve. Patricia went silent. Vanessa bit her lip. Chocolates? Patricia asked, barely audible. Yes. He ate all of them. Before more could be said, a doctor entered the waiting room. Mrs. Collins? Yes. Althea and Patricia both replied, stepping forward. We've conducted initial tests. Gerald is suffering from severe food poisoning. But, he paused, concerned, the reaction is more intense than we'd expect from typical food contamination. We're running more tests to be sure. Did he eat or drink anything unusual? Althea quickly responded, he ate a whole box of gourmet chocolates last night. They were from his mother. Do you still have the box? The doctor asked. It was on the living room table, Althea said. It should still be there. I'll go get it, Vanessa cut in suddenly. Just tell me your address. Althea hesitated but gave it. As Vanessa hurried out, Althea couldn't help but feel unsettled. Something wasn't right. The unease was quickly turning into dread. Patricia stood nearby, visibly shaken. Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. The doctor nodded and walked away to continue treatment. A few moments later, a man in a gray suit approached them. Mrs. Collins, he said to Althea. I'm Detective Parks. I'd like to ask a few questions. Detective? Patricia echoed, her voice trembling. Why? Traces of certain toxins were detected in Mr. Collins's preliminary blood work. This may be more than simple food poisoning. Althea's heart dropped. The chocolates. Detective Parks looked at Patricia. Where did you purchase them? Patricia swallowed hard. Chateau Chocolatier. But, there must be some mistake. Do you have any of the chocolates left? Or the packaging? Althea replied, Vanessa went to retrieve them, but... The detective looked at her. We'll need to visit your apartment. Just to be thorough. Of course, Althea nodded and handed over her keys. As she walked away from the group, her legs unsteady beneath her, a thought returned, faint but chilling. Patricia's voice over the phone. Are you serious? While Gerald remained in the hospital undergoing further tests, Althea paced the quiet corridor outside the intensive care unit. Her phone buzzed in her hand. It was another missed call from Patricia. 5 more followed in the next hour. Then the screen lit up again. This time, Althea answered. Where is my son? Patricia's voice was sharp, nearly panicked. They're still running tests. The doctors think it might be poisoning, Althea said softly. There was silence on the other end, then Patricia said, I'm coming back. I need to speak with the doctors myself. She hung up before Althea could respond. Later that day, both Patricia and Vanessa returned to the hospital, their expressions grim. But it was Vanessa who looked especially tense, her hands fidgeting and eyes darting around the waiting area. Did you find the chocolate box? Althea asked. Vanessa shook her head, eyes avoiding hers. It wasn't there. Maybe it got tossed in the trash. Althea frowned. No. I left it right on the coffee table. Before she could press further, a tall, lean man in a dark blazer entered the waiting area and approached them. I'm Detective Parks again. We've completed our search of the apartment. Did you find anything? Althea asked, heart pounding. We recovered the chocolate box from the kitchen trash can, he said. It's been sent to the lab for analysis. Vanessa turned pale. We also found a second, identical box in the trunk of Miss Vanessa's vehicle. Vanessa's eyes widened. She tried to stand, but an officer gently placed a hand on her shoulder, urging her to stay seated. Patricia Collins and Vanessa Collins, I am detaining you for questioning on suspicion of attempted murder. What? Althea gasped. No, wait. But her voice trailed off as she looked into Patricia's face. Her expression wasn't of shock or denial, it was of cold resignation. You can't do this. Vanessa shouted, her voice shrill. There's no proof. Detective Parks remained calm. We'll be confirming everything with the lab reports. But there's sufficient reason to investigate. As the two women were escorted out of the waiting area, Althea stood frozen, her breath shallow. This couldn't be happening. Gerald's mother and sister arrested? For trying to poison him? Or, had they meant to poison her? That night, after Gerald was stabilized and moved from intensive care to a recovery room, Althea sat beside his bed. He was pale and exhausted, but conscious. What happened? He asked faintly. The doctors think it was poisoning, Althea whispered. They're still testing everything. Gerald's forehead furrowed. I only ate those chocolates. I know. She touched his hand. It was enough. They fell into silence. Gerald drifted off again, his breathing slow and even. Althea stepped out into the hallway to call Jessica, her longtime friend and a paralegal. Jessica listened intently as Althea recounted the entire chain of events. This is huge, Jessica said. And terrifying. Are the police pressing charges? They've detained them for questioning. They found another chocolate box in Vanessa's car. Then you need to think back, Althea. Has this happened before? Has Patricia ever given you food, drink, anything meant only for you? Althea's thoughts spun. Actually, yes. At our wedding reception, she poured a glass of wine for me, just me. I ended up in bed the rest of the night with a fever and vomiting. Everyone thought I'd caught a virus. Then at Christmas, she gave me a tin of cookies. Said she baked them just for me. I was sick for 3 days. Jessica was writing things down. It's possible this isn't the first attempt. And if it wasn't a random act, then it was deliberate. Althea sat on the hospital bench, her knees pulled to her chest. Jessica, 2 weeks ago, Gerald told me his work had updated his life insurance. He named me and Patricia as beneficiaries. There was a long pause. Jessica's voice came through slowly. That could be a motive. Especially if they were in financial trouble. They were, Althea said. Patricia had talked about struggling after her husband passed. She said their savings were nearly gone. Vanessa never kept a job more than a few months. Jessica's tone turned serious. You need to tell the detective everything. Every detail. That evening, Althea sat down with Detective Parks and told him everything she had just remembered. Her own bouts of illness. The special gifts. The insurance policies. You've done the right thing, Mrs. Collins, he said quietly. We'll be following up with the insurance company and running a background check on both women. A week later, Gerald was released from the hospital. He was still weak, but the doctors said he was lucky. Any more toxins in his system could have had permanent consequences. At home, Althea carefully cooked his meals and kept a watchful eye. The laughter between them came back in small doses, shy and quiet. Do you really think they meant to poison me? Gerald asked one night, lying on the couch. Althea didn't answer right away. I'm not sure, she said honestly. But I think I was the one they intended to hurt. You just got in the way. Gerald looked devastated. Why would Mom do that? They don't see me as family, she whispered. They never did. 3 days later, Althea made a decision. She sat down next to Gerald and took his hand. We need to go to your mother's house. I know you don't want to, but we have to look for more evidence. Are you sure? Gerald asked, his voice low. For our future, she said. We need to know the truth. They waited until Patricia and Vanessa were attending a meeting with their attorney. Gerald used his spare key to unlock the front door of the house where he'd grown up. It looked the same. Neat. Pristine. Controlled. Start with her desk, Althea said quietly. They crept upstairs, each step creaking beneath them. Patricia's room was immaculate, not a frame or pillow out of place. On the desk sat a locked drawer. Gerald managed to wedge it open with a screwdriver from the kitchen. Inside were financial documents, all neatly sorted. Althea pulled out a familiar folder and opened it. Gerald, she said, voice tight, this is your insurance policy. His name was clearly printed on the front. The beneficiaries, Althea Collins and Patricia Collins. A small handwritten note was clipped to the corner, to be changed, remove AC. Althea's heart sank. She reached deeper into the drawer and pulled out another envelope. It was her life insurance policy. The beneficiary? Patricia Collins. And Vanessa Collins. Did you sign this? She asked. Gerald shook his head. Mom said she'd handle all the paperwork. Althea stared at the signatures. One was definitely hers. But the second, Gerald's, looked shaky. It wasn't his usual script. Look at this, she said, opening a box beneath the dresser. Inside were photographs of Althea, but not ordinary ones, they had pins through them. Doodles of scribbled symbols on the edges. Alongside the photos were bottles labeled with herbs and powders, none of which she recognized. On the desk nearby sat a laptop. Gerald typed in his mother's favorite password, Hope 1975. It worked. They opened the browser history. Searches like slow-acting poisons, insurance payout timelines, and untraceable toxins filled the screen. Gerald stared, pale as a sheet. I can't believe this. I don't want to. You need to, Althea said. That's when the front door slammed. They weren't alone anymore. Vanessa stood in the doorway of Patricia's bedroom, her eyes locked on Althea and Gerald. Her expression changed the moment she saw the open desk drawer and the laptop screen still glowing. You have no right to be here, she snapped, stepping into the room. Her voice was louder than the quiet stillness of the house could hold. Althea didn't flinch. We're here to find the truth, something both of you tried to hide. Vanessa's mouth tightened, her eyes flicking toward the documents spread across the desk. Gerald slowly stood up, still weak but steadier now. Vanessa, he said, his voice calm but breaking, why? Why would you and Mom do this? Vanessa laughed, not out of humor, but bitterness. Because everything changed when you married her. Mom saw it, I saw it. You stopped being ours. That's not a reason to hurt someone. You could have. What? Vanessa cut in. Watched you give everything to her? She was never part of this family. Althea stepped forward, lifting the insurance documents. This wasn't just resentment. You were planning something. Look, loans taken out in Gerald's name. Life insurance on both of us. And these aren't gifts, she added, pointing to the box of herbs. They're ingredients. You don't have proof that any of this. Don't, Gerald interrupted. The police already have the other chocolate box. They're testing it. They know. Vanessa's mask slipped. Her voice dropped. You think they'll believe you over Mom? Over me? They already do, Althea replied. They have enough to open a case. And more will come. Vanessa stood still for a moment. Then, in a lower voice, almost a whisper, she said, this wasn't supposed to happen. The dosage, it was never meant to be lethal. Just enough to scare you. To make you weak. Althea felt something go cold in her chest. You wanted to scare me? We wanted you gone. Mom said if you got sick again, Gerald would finally see you weren't strong enough for this family. So you thought he'd leave me, Althea said flatly. You thought I'd walk away. It worked before, Vanessa said, as if the logic made sense. You missed holidays. You got sick at the wedding. You disappeared from family photos. We thought you'd give up eventually. Instead, Gerald said quietly, you almost killed me. The silence in the room stretched long before Vanessa turned on her heel and walked out. Gerald exhaled slowly, then looked around the room, the photographs, the evidence, the bitterness that had clung to every memory he had in this house. I don't want to come back here, he said. You don't have to, Althea replied. We'll start over. Later that day, Gerald received a call from Detective Parks. Your mother's confessed, he said. She admitted she'd been planning it for months. Said she regretted involving your sister, but she didn't deny anything. Althea sat beside Gerald on the couch, holding his hand as the detective explained the charges being filed. There would be court hearings, evaluations, and a process that could take months. But there was no question now. The truth was out. The trial took place in late autumn. The leaves in Boston had turned rust red and golden, but for Althea, the world remained gray. Patricia Collins was sentenced to 5 years in prison for attempted assault and conspiracy. Her defense lawyer pleaded emotional instability, citing grief and financial desperation after the death of her husband. The court acknowledged her mental state but not enough to dismiss the clear, repeated intentions behind her actions. Vanessa received a 3-year suspended sentence. Her confession, and the claim that she had acted under her mother's psychological control, granted her leniency. She expressed remorse, though her letter to the court and later to Althea was filled with apologies that never quite sounded sincere. I want to live my own life now, Vanessa wrote. Free from Mom. I'm sorry for everything. Althea read the letter, then quietly folded it and placed it in a drawer. Forgiveness would take time. And maybe, some things weren't meant to be forgiven. Outside the courthouse, Gerald and Althea stood hand in hand on the stone steps. It's over, she said softly. He nodded. We can finally move forward. They did just that. They left the city and moved into a quiet neighborhood in western Connecticut. Their new home was small but full of light. Gerald found work at a local accounting firm, taking a lower salary but gaining peace in return. Althea poured her energy into her design business and even picked up her first big client within a month of moving. The nights were quiet. Peaceful. Then, one evening, as they unpacked boxes in their new living room, Althea turned to Gerald with a soft smile. I need to tell you something. He looked up from a stack of books. We're going to be a family of 3. The silence was instant, followed by a warmth that slowly filled the room. Are you serious? She nodded. I took a test this morning. Gerald walked over, eyes shining. He pulled her into a gentle hug, burying his face in her shoulder. For a long time, neither of them said a word. Then, softly, he whispered, we're going to make sure this child never knows what we've been through. No, Althea agreed. But they'll know we came through it together. That night, as moonlight streamed in through the windows of their quiet new home, Althea lay awake, her hand resting on her stomach, her other holding Gerald's. I'm so glad I didn't eat those chocolates, she murmured. Gerald smiled in the darkness and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Thanks to me eating them all, he said with a quiet chuckle, we discovered the truth. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. Inside, they finally slept side by side, in a house free of secrets, in a life they had chosen, and a future that felt, for the first time, truly theirs. Thank you all for watching the video, and see you soon.